Hi, my name is Mackenzie Crouch and welcome to my obstacle course for assignment 5. I'll get right into it. So first I have these moving blocks which can push my actor around. And then I have next on my obstacle course is these spikes which have an impulse applied to them. So I have a little bit of impulse there and some upward movement. And then I have this looped platform which moves around in a square rotation. So it just keeps moving around over and over again. The next obstacle is a physics block, which I can move by giving it enough force to push it out of the way. Then we have more blocks which have a little bit more hover to them, is what I call it. So I've added some hover to both the blocks behind me and in front of me. So my objective here was to finish the level by getting all the way to the top of the cylinder by jumping on these blocks. Going into the blueprints themselves, so I have 4 different blueprints. So first we'll go through the side block, which is the first one that I went past, the blocks moving back and forth. To do this, I have it setting the world location, the initial location of the blocks. And after setting the initial location, I'm going to break those vectors and add only a direction in the Y. That way I can move them back and forth, which the Y is the location that I needed them to go. And then I'm looping those with a timeline, but I'm doing a loop based on this switching timeline direction. So basically this timeline is playing from front to back and then reversing, so it's playing from back to front and over again. And of course, as that's doing that, I'm setting the new location each time and having it sweep the character. So the timeline, basically that 400 in the Y direction here, is basically described here as 0, 0, and then when it gets to 2, it's doubling that, so it's going 800, it's adding 800 in the Y, and then it's subtracting that 800 again back down to 0, and then of course the timeline will repeat in the opposite direction. For the blocks going in the opposite direction, so this is for the left to right blocks, the right to left blocks, all I do is change the timeline, so this is -2. That way it's starting from the right, subtracting that 800, and then putting that back on. Now for the spikes, I have them casted from the first person character, so I have when the capsule overlaps, I cast 2 spikes. I get the location, so basically the vector between the character and the spikes themselves, and that movement I'm adding an impulse to by breaking the vector, adding a z component, and multiplying the whole vector by 4. I'm doing this with an add impulse and changing that velocity of the character. Going on to the platform, we have a similar kind of thing based on the timeline from the block. So what I'm doing here is I'm repeating this, looping it over and over again. The difference is I'm doing both the forward and backward to play from start. That way it always loops in the same direction, so it's not going in a square and then repeating in the opposite direction. It's always going in one direction. And I'm doing this by getting the spline length, finding the distance of the spline length along the timeline, and then making the platform's new location that same distance along the spline. Then we go on to the floating, so the hover. So the blocks, both the first set and the second set, so the wall of blocks and the staircase of blocks, both have physics applied on them based on getting that component class and then simulating a set physics node here. And then I'm ticking their location by adding a z, a trace length. So I'm adding their z, adding to the z so that it goes up and down or is farther away from the ground. And then I'm using that value. If it's true, I'm finding the location and the world location, and of course getting a vector from that. And then again, I'm using that same value from before, from the z, to divide by and create this alpha channel that I need it to be, and applying also a hover force, which is the amount of force I have on the block. Then I'm multiplying that by the impact normal, and setting my force on the primitive component or component I'm using. I also set linear damping and angular damping, so the movement based on whether it's up or down or the rotational movement. So the first set of blocks actually has less linear damping and angular damping, so they move more comparatively to the staircase, which has more linear and angular damping, which restricts their movement much more. Thank you for watching. Bye.